everyone. I'm here with Naabil, who is the founder of Skin for All and an Exeter medical student. So, would you like to introduce yourself, Naabil?
Yeah, of course. Hi. First of all, thank you for having me. As Aisha said, I'm Naabil. I'm an extra medical student. I'm currently in my third year, and I'm the founder of Skin for All, which aims to highlight diversity in medicine.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about what Skin for All is and what made you want to develop it?
Yeah, of course. So, Skin for All is mainly an educational platform for medical students and members of the public to learn more about skin conditions and how they present differently on skin of color. Um, I guess the website has kind of ebbed and flowed based on demands, based on my own personal experiences, and currently it now has extradermal manifestations which focus on things like how the skin could present in cases like liver cirrhosis or heart failure, and then alongside that, we have a timeline of history surrounding racial inequalities in medicine, as well as a kind of drop down section talking about different medical tools and how they highlight racial disparities as well. So it's kind of a myriad of topics that I've focused on. And it's mainly because, I mean, as we know, in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, we really saw the situation we were in with regards to medicine and racial inequalities, just looking at the mortality rates between people of color and white patients when it came to COVID-19 is just a perfect example of how we need to change our medical system. And I think
Yeah.
starting from medical education, kind of going from the bottom up, is a really, really useful and quite relevant movement to get on board with. So that's kind of the main reason why I made Skin for All. And then I guess just alongside that, looking at my own personal teaching within university. So as I go to University of Exeter, the demographics are very much homogenous and they mainly do focus on the white perspective. However, looking at my teaching, there were definitely a lot of gaps and a lot of areas of improvement, which Exeter is definitely working towards. But I thought potentially, providing a resource like Skin for All would be a good way to move that momentum a bit more quickly and effectively.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're so right. The thing is, healthcare disparities based on ethnicity, it's not a new thing. Because I'm doing
No,
research at the moment and I'm looking at papers that are from like the early 2000s, even from like the 90s, that have already showed that there were these disparities. But to me personally, it doesn't feel like we've really addressed it until the past couple of years. Like you said, I think COVID kind of pushed it to the forefront. But even with like pulse oximeters, it wasn't in just in the COVID pandemic we realised that they might not be as effective on darker skin. People have realised that beforehand, but it just seems no one did anything about it, which seems very
no.
strange.
No, exactly. It's exactly what you said. There's such a historical embedding of racial inequalities in medicine that it's quite easy to kind of differentiate yourself from the past and say like, oh, yeah, that happened in the past, it's not happening now, or
Mm.
that's happened in the past, it shouldn't be happening now. And obviously that's a good mindset to have. But I think actually looking at the direct impacts of the past on present dynamics in medicine, present statistics in medicine, present disparities in medicine is really, really important. And I think it's yeah, it's just a case of like looking at what the direct results of like things like colonialism, things like biased research has on our current perceptions of medicine, especially within the Western world.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like I said, we're kind of both in the same like diversity spaces. So I suppose we're both looking at a lot of the same resources, and it is shocking. And I know we've spoken about Divided before as well by Annabelle Soamimo,
Mhm.
which is a really great book, and I'd recommend everyone to read it because it just opens your eyes to so many things that they don't teach you in medical school that underpins everything that we do and does lead to these disparities. Because if students aren't being taught it, like how are they supposed to know? So I think that's so good you're including it in Skin for All to show people kind of some of the background to all of these disparities we seem to continue to have, but we are making progress, I think, which is good.
Yeah, definitely.
What challenges have you faced when you were developing Skin for All?
I think there were quite a few challenges that were kind of in my past when making Skin for All. One of them was, I would say, potentially being quite isolated in my I guess, my drive to make the website. So within my university, obviously this isn't a criticism against anyone at the university, but I think it was quite an isolating idea because it's something that's still very new within spaces
Mm,
like Exeter within the southwest of England because of just the homogenous demographics. It's a product of the demographics we're currently serving in this area of the UK. So that would be a major factor that I would probably take into consideration. But saying that, actually talking to change makers like, you, for example, Annabelle, for example, Dwayne, Susan, like those are all amazing people who have worked in healthcare disparities and especially within the HIV context as well. So it made me feel a lot less alone.
mm,
And it made me branch out to a bigger community of people who are also trying to diversify and decolonize medicine, which I think is really inspiring. I think another challenge would probably be timing and just logistics as well. I guess when I was creating the website, I'd like to say I put loads of planning in, but as we know, things don't always go to plan. So,
yeah.
I gave myself I gave myself a bunch of deadlines and a bunch of things like I need to get this done by this date and this date. And sometimes I wouldn't reach that deadline, or sometimes I would do things out of order. And I think that was quite stressful in the short term because I would think, oh
Mm,
God, I've done this thing, but I haven't actually done what I was supposed to do. So actually trying to come to grips with organizing myself properly and abiding by deadlines. Like Skin for All was made only in, I think, around 2 to 3 months from what I
yeah.
remember. It was made over the summer of 2023. So it was quite a short time period. And as you know, obviously
Yeah.
websites may take, years or like months or years to make. So giving myself that deadline of this needs to be done by the end of summer was very, very stressful. But I think
Yeah.
it was worth
I'm
it in
sure.
the long
Oh,
term.
yeah.
But thankfully, I think it was worth it in the long term because it meant that we could hit the ground running in September, where
Yeah.
students were getting back to university and they could potentially use it as a resource.
Definitely. I think that's a hard part, balancing all this alongside medical school as well. And not just medical school, just like your other extracurriculars too. And yeah, you definitely, I don't know, I thought designing a website would be so much easier than it actually is. Especially if you just design it from scratch. Oh, it's so difficult. It looks so ugly when you do it by yourself. I did it the first time and I was like, why doesn't it look like all of these nice websites? It does take a lot longer, I think, than you think it will,
It
won't it?
does. It definitely does, especially when you're doing it on your own as well. You kind of underestimate how much, I guess, skill is required to make a good looking website. And like,
Mm.
there's a reason why we have graphic designers and there's a reason we have
Yeah,
people dedicated to making beautiful websites. Like obviously we're not graphic designers, we're students. So
yeah,
I think that was also something that was pretty big as well. It's like, does this website look appealing enough for people? Like,
yeah.
if they click on it, will it look legitimate? Will it look like something they want to keep reading? So I think that was another big thing you have to think about. But that's less about, I guess, the medical slash social side, and it's more about the marketing and design side.
That's an
But yeah.
important part, isn't it? Because you have to
Mhm,
make things, if someone's going to engage with something, it does need to look good, it needs to look nice,
mhm.
it needs to flow nicely. And I know when sometimes you design something and you think it works, and then you go and do it on your phone, and it's like, oh, that doesn't actually work, or the text is cut off, or something's in the wrong place. Because you have to think about what it looks like on a computer. And I think most of the
Mhm.
time when you design it, you think about it on a computer, whereas in reality, most people probably access things via their phones now. And I feel
Yeah.
like the mobile side of things kind of gets a little bit forgotten.
I think I completely agree with you though. It's a really interesting point you raise about like making sure that the material you make not only conveys your message but also
Mm,
appeals to the audience, because it's very easy to come out with like a post just with a bunch of text just like giving
yeah.
your message forward. It might be a very relevant message, it might be a very accurate message, it might be a very insightful message. However, if you've portrayed it in a way that's inaccessible to a bunch of people, they're
Mm,
not going to take it up and it's not going to be as successful and as, I guess, well received than you want it to be. So that was a big thing I considered when making Skin for All, where I thought, okay, my two target demographics would be medical students because it's an educational website rather than like a clinical website, and then
yeah.
patients who could potentially just learn a bit about skin conditions. As I'm a medical student, I mean, I've stated this in the website as well. None of this should be taken on as finalized medical advice. Obviously, you need to talk to your practitioner. However, it's a good way to become informed, based on, peer-reviewed studies that I've included in the website. But I think, like, language, for example, when I was making like the pathophysiology section of each of the skin conditions, we know what pathophysiology is. That's a really,
Yeah,
like, I guess, commonly used term between medical students. However, if you say to someone randomly on the street, what's the pathophysiology of eczema or something,
yeah.
they're gonna
They're
be
gonna
like,
go,
what?
"What is that?"
What are you saying? So, like, actually trying to break down that jargonistic language that a lot of medical students and healthcare professionals use to make it more accessible for the public, I think was really, really important. And it was something I really, really wanted to consider when thinking about, I guess, the marketing and the design of the website, because I thought, well, this is great for medical students, but if I start pitching this to members of the public and saying, oh yeah, you can use this website as well, and they don't understand half of what I'm talking
Yeah.
about, we're going to turn around and say, well, no, we can't use this website because it doesn't appeal to us and it's not catered for our level of medical understanding.
Mm. Yeah, I think that is a really good skill to have, to be able to, because you need to do that in practice as well, don't you? You need to be able to explain complex medical terminology, disease processes in a way that your patient understands, because it is very easy just to fall into the words that
Yeah.
and say things that we understand, and then your patients sat there like it's all gone over their head and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, or it makes things sound a lot scarier than they
Mhm.
actually are as well, sometimes the way that you say things. And yeah, I think all medical students and doctors and healthcare professionals need to be able to convey things in a simple way. You need to be able to explain something to a child, not that you need to explain the full pathophysiology of eczema to a child, but you have to, I suppose, convey to them, what is going on, because patients do understand. And you can use, I suppose, jargon, but you need to quantify it and explain it first. But I think if you're just presented with a lot of jargon, it is difficult to understand, even as a student, if I'm reading, because some papers you read and they've got such complex terminology that it's like, mental gymnastics to try and understand what
Yeah.
they're actually saying. And like, get you've done some really good work, but I can't actually read this easily and understand it easily. And that's not even just about conditions; it's about just research in general. So I think being able to make things in an accessible, informative way that still conveys exactly what you want to do, still sounds intelligent, but without being too
Yeah.
scientific too. Because I think things they can go it could go the other way too, can't it?
Yeah, you could kind of like end up sounding a bit patronizing and saying things like, "Oh, do you know what, I don't know, redness is?" And like, obviously, you
Yeah,
don't want to convey it like that. You need to find that good balance where it's like you're explaining your message effectively, but you're not talking down or
yeah.
talking too complicated to your audience that you're trying to look at. And yeah, it's just, I think it's a major thing that has caused a lot of distrust and a lot of, I guess, conflict between the medical and non-medical communities. Like, we can use one of the most recent examples, the vaccines for COVID-19. I think there it was a very obviously quick turnaround in terms of creating that vaccine. However, I think one of the biggest barriers to a lot of people in the public not taking up the vaccine is just lack of information and lack of
Mm.
understanding of what the vaccine actually did. And I think if you break it down in an effective way, like, obviously I'm not saying, you and I are going to change the course of public
Yeah.
health forever, but I'm saying that if you get someone who's actually very good at communicating with members of the public and saying, this is what the vaccine is, this is what's included in it, this is the study that has shown how effective it is, and this
And
is
this
what
is
it could
why
do
it
for
was so
you.
quick. I think that's what people they
Yeah.
were like, it's too quick, it's too quick. I'm like, no, it's because you had a giant population of people that
Yeah.
you could test it on, like basically the entire world across loads of different countries. Basically,
Mhm.
all the world's money went into
Yes,
creating
exactly.
it. That's why other things take so long. It's not necessarily because it takes that long to test something. It's just because all the bureaucracy, funding,
Mhm.
participants, they're the issues that kind of stop things rather than, it not
Exactly.
being
Like, exactly.
properly.
Exactly that. Like, the way you've described it as well is like, it's a perfect way of just telling people who don't come
Mm.
from medical backgrounds why it was so quick. Like, I
Yeah,
remember having loads of conversations with like family members and friends and actually saying, well, the COVID vaccine was already kind of a thing. Like, coronavirus has existed for centuries. Like, that it's not like we're starting afresh. It's just this new
yeah,
strain that's come forward that's a lot more um that's a lot more infectious. So, I mean, obviously, this is deviating into vaccine, which isn't the topic of this conversation. But I think it's just really important that you have people out there who are readily available to explain all of this and
Yeah,
in an
to make things
accessible way
accessible.
without using that really scary, jargonistic scientific language that even scares us as well, you know? Like sometimes I look at an academic paper and I'm like, like the title doesn't even make sense to me. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to risk this.
Literally, I'm there. I'm like, I don't even understand what anything. I can't even understand what you're trying to say. So,
No,
yeah,
exactly.
definitely. I think trying to have things in a good, accessible, simple to understand way is the best way to go about it. Where do you see Skin for All going in the future?
Well, I'm actually this year, well, okay, I guess going back a bit. So when I made Skin for All, I kind of had a vision for how I wanted each year to pan out in terms of what I
Mm,
would focus on, with regards to the website. So the first year was mainly about like 2023 was mainly about like marketing, just getting the word out there, talking to students, talking to medical personnel, talking to members of the public, and just saying, this is Skin for All. Use it if you'd like, ask me any questions. And that was really good. Like obviously like the BBC managed to cover it, LBC managed to cover it, the BMA managed to cover it, and it was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. But I think for this year I really want to focus on what the actual outcomes of Skin for All have shown. So I'm trying to apply for more conferences with abstracts and posters about Skin for All and just looking at the, I guess, the quantifiable data that has come from the website. So
yeah,
currently, again, because it's still in the early days, it's it's only been a few months since Skin for All has come out. I haven't had any huge data sets highlighting the impact of Skin for All, but I've had that qualitative data. So like the amount of awareness that was raised, the amount of students that have responded, the amount of,
mm,
I guess, the ratings that the website has received. Like it might not be purely scientific, but it's very much about the social impact of Skin for All through a medical lens.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, just trying to, I guess, get the data out there and just trying to get that impact out there within the medical world is a huge factor for me. And then I think actually communicating with different members of the community. So exciting, like really exciting news that's coming up is I'm presenting at the Lord Mayor's coffee morning, which
ooh,
actually yeah, it's a really exciting prospect, and it allows members of the public to come, and ask the Lord Mayor about his work. He, in Exeter, the Lord Mayor works with the NHS, so
okay,
he knows a lot about health and he knows a lot about inequalities. So it's like it's a huge honor to present there, but I think it's a really good opportunity for me to kind of reach out to a new community,
mm,
to talk about Skin for All. And even if it's an Exeter and it's a very homogenous community, it's still really important to talk
yeah,
about
definitely.
accessibility in medicine because it impacts everyone. Even if you're not a direct recipient of discrimination in medicine, it still impacts you, whether we have accessibility in medicine or not.
Yeah,
And then hopefully in October, this is a fingers crossed, I'll be presenting at the Sidmouth Science Festival, and there we'll have parents there, we'll have kids there, we'll have budding scientists there, we'll have budding medics there. So it will be a
oh,
really
that's great.
interesting community to like interact with. So I guess that's kind of my focus for this year, just interacting with different public members of the public and groups in the public, and then also trying to get that data out there to the medical community.
Great. Sounds exciting. I can't wait to see it all. So, outside of those goals for Skin for All, what are your more general goals for 2024?
Oh, that's a good question. I've thought of it, and actually, I have a Notion page up for my goals. So let me just get that up.
I know we all put our goals. I have my mood board for 2024 on my Notion. Honestly, I'd be lost without Notion.
Honestly, it's amazing. I think for 2024, I guess for me it's mainly about trying to change my perspective of things, because I think in 2023, with all of the attention that Skin for All got, I think I seem to have strayed a bit away from my original goal, which I've have stopped myself to think about, which is we want to diversify medicine and what
Yeah.
are the results of that. And that kind of feeds into my goals about Skin for All. Like it is quite related to Skin for All, where it's like I want to see the actual data and I want to see the actual results that come out of things that I do. So
Mm,
by that I mean, I mean, as you as you know, I mean, the audience may not know this, but I get involved in a lot of different projects. And I've recently come out with a newsletter that
Yeah.
actually tries to make medicine a bit more accessible through like resources about different medical opportunities that are out there. And my main goal for that is make medicine more accessible, allow people to pursue their goals. And I want to see what that kind of leads to, you know?
Mm.
So I think trying to focus more on the goals and what my actual aim is for a lot of different projects is a huge, huge goal I have, I guess, in general for 2024. And then I guess trying to be a bit more, I think trying to be a bit more reflective is one of my biggest goals as well. So it's always great to have loads of things happening at the same time. But when you do have things happening at the same time, it can be very easy to forget to actually take a step back and think, okay, I've done this thing in a certain way. What went well? What went badly? What could I do in the future? How can I change this? So,
Mm.
I mean, I've already tried to kind of exhibit this because last year I did carry out a few presentations about Skin for All and some of the other projects I've done. And I think there is a lot of areas for improvement. And so hopefully in 2024, I'll be able to carry that improvement and actually see the results of it and see maybe the audience becomes more engaged, or maybe the audience asks me more questions, or maybe the audience actually checks out the website and gives me feedback. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, I would very much say impact. I guess if I were to summarize it in one word, impact would be my like goal for 2024.
No, that sounds really good. And I think you're also right. When you're doing so many things, it becomes, you kind of get tunnel vision. And when one thing doesn't go right the way that you expect it to, it's very easy to kind of latch on to that one thing and think, oh, I've done terrible. When in reality, you've done so many good things. And, not every single thing, you can't get every conference presentation. You can't get everything that you applied for. You can't always get all the things that you want, but it doesn't negate all the amazing things and all the hard work that you've put into things. And it's so important to just keep that end goal in mind, even if things aren't working exactly how you want it. What is the end goal that you want? And if
Yeah.
you're doing it for good reason because you want to make a difference, then that's the main thing. I think it shouldn't be about, oh, I want to get famous, I want to do this, I want to do
Yeah.
that. So you actually want to have an impact and change things, because it's all well and good doing loads of things, but if nothing actually comes from it,
Mhm.
then it's kind of pointless, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. And like going back to that comment about like some people just want to be famous from this stuff. I think it's a very unsustainable model of thinking to have.
Mm,
So like actually going into different projects, especially humanitarian or human rights or I guess justice-based actions or justice-based projects. I think if you go in with the mindset of I want to basically come out of this famous or I want to come out of this being a well-known name or stuff like that,
mm,
it's a very unsustainable model because how are you going to measure that? You're not going to measure how
yeah.
famous you are. Like, are you going to
There's
look at your
always going to be
Instagram?
someone who's better. They'll always, well, someone who's like
Exactly.
quote unquote better, someone who's, you'll always be chasing something, and you'll never be truly happy if that's what you're
Exactly.
aspiring to.
100%. Because, like, with things that are, as I guess, I would say, as superficial and changing as fame, like, it's
Mm,
really hard to keep track of, like, what outcome do you want from that? Like, if you want to be famous, great. But, like, Instagram followers don't I mean, like, if you're getting involved in something like racial inequality and then you're like, I want to be famous from that, you could say,
yeah,
well, the impact you've had because of racial inequality doesn't, like, it can't specifically marry up with the amount of fame you have. It's just a very
yeah,
roundabout way
exactly.
of saying it. It's like you need to look at your short term and long term goals. And it's great. Yeah, if you gain attention and gain recognition, that's perfect. That's brilliant. But I think that shouldn't be your primary goal. Your primary goal should be just spreading the message of equality and diversity.
Yeah, definitely. You're very, very right. And you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but what other projects are you involved in outside of Skin for All?
So I've got a few more projects. So I I run a podcast called Very Junior Doctors with my colleague, or my peer, Chloe. She's in my year group, and we basically just talk about everything to do with medical school, really. We haven't been as active in year three just because of how busy year three has been, and it's
Yeah.
understandably so. So we've got loads of episodes about year one and two, and we just delve into things like mental health, how you can navigate placements, how you can navigate a work-life balance, stuff like that. Then I've got a newsletter called Future Doctor, which I'm mentioned it earlier, but it basically is a kind of just resource for medical students to refer to, where they're given, pages about different medical opportunities that are coming about. And I like do all the research on my own. I don't copy and paste it from ChatGPT or something, but
Yeah.
it's it's a I think it's a very intense kind of project that I took on board, because obviously you want to make sure everything is as relevant and as useful for students as possible,
Mm.
whilst also being effective and like doing it bi-monthly. But yeah, that's a new project I've gotten involved with. I'm also the hopefully by the time this comes out, this will be announced. I said this in the last episode as well. But I'm the global lead for student recruitment in social prescription. So that's quite, I mean, that's a new project that I'm really interested in and I'm really excited about, because I was involved in social prescription in year one and a little bit in year two, and then I
Yeah.
kind of dropped off a little bit. So now I guess I'm back on a more global platform and it's really exciting. And then other than that, I guess I do a lot of work around EDI, so equality, diversity, and inclusion in medical school. And with Skin for All, I kind of use that as a way of highlighting what we really need to change in medical education. And
Mm.
that's been seen in like different lectures I've done. I've done loads of different projects, especially, I mean, presentations, especially within the exeter community.
Yeah.
But excitingly, I have been a guest speaker at other universities, like the University of Osteopathy, for example. And I'm I have just been invited to a recent speaker event at the University of Plymouth. So
Oh,
yeah,
very
it's all
nice.
really exciting, and yeah, I guess I'm just eager to really get started.
Yeah, and get out there. Wow, you're doing so many amazing things. So I think the last question, hopefully, if everyone's not inspired enough from listening, what advice would you give to students who want to develop projects that enact change?
Oh, it's a really good question. I guess I have so many pieces of advice, but if I could summarize it, it would be, don't let rejection or don't let challenges get you down and stop your
Mm.
momentum. So I
Yeah.
think it's really important that when you have a project, firstly, I mean, we've discussed this a lot, we've said goals a lot, we've said impact a lot, but establish what your aims are and what your impact is and what you want to measure, what you want to get out of this. If you want to,
Mm.
and even if it's something like, if you want to improve your communication skills, that's something you can measure. Like if you become more
Yeah.
confident talking to different people that you don't potentially know, like that's a really good goal to have. Or if you want to have something bigger, like you want to have 1,000 people sign up to your newsletter, or you want 1,000 people looking at your website. You know, these are all really good goals that I guess you should kind of jot down before you start the project, and whilst you're starting the project, and really having that I guess that vision to enact that change and see those goals come to life. Um, in the process of doing that, though, you need to be aware that there will be challenges, there will be snags, there will be
Mm.
moments where potentially momentum dips, and to that I say, it's going to be a roller coaster. Not everything is smooth sailing, and I don't think everything should be smooth sailing, because then in my opinion, it's not worth it if it doesn't come with its challenges. Because if you want to overcome those challenges, you build your resilience, and the best projects have a lot of resilience and a lot of passion and a lot of, I guess, blood, sweat, and tears behind it. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, just facing those challenges with a productive and a positive mindset. Obviously, don't be too positive. It is important sometimes to maybe just scream if you don't get something, or maybe have a little cry. It's quite therapeutic. But at the end of the day, just don't stop, and don't let those challenges stop you from achieving your goals. So yeah, I guess that would be my piece of advice for anyone who wants to start a project that enacts change. Just don't stop, and don't let challenges, I guess, slow down your momentum.
No, that's great. And I think jotting down, I mean, like we were saying about, we've done our goals for 2024. I think just writing your goals is so important because, like I was saying earlier, it's so easy to get lost in the things that you don't get. But then if you look back at your goals and read them, you're like, wow, me 6 months ago would have been really happy to be where I am now, but me now is getting annoyed at it. So I think actually putting things on paper, or if it's on your Notion or on a calendar or on your wall, putting something just to so you can see how far you've come is so important.
Mhm. Definitely, 100%.
Right, that is wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's lovely to speak to you as always. Where can
Thank
people
you for
find you
having
if they want
me.
to get in touch? search?
So I guess my LinkedIn is just Naabil Khan. My Instagram is naa.n.khan. I'm sure you'll put it in in the
I'll
links
put
as
it in the
well.
description.
Yeah, I don't think I need to spell everything out. And then we have a very junior doctor's Instagram as well, and then Skin for All, so it's just skinforall .co.uk. And then I'm just trying to think of anything else. I guess if you want to subscribe to the Future Doctor newsletter as well, Aisha will very kindly just put my email in the description
Yeah.
as well, so you can just get in contact with me and ask to be added. But I think that's everything. Yeah.
Wow, great. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.